Okay, so welcome to the next session. Hopefully you found the previous session pre-recorded with Jan Riviere from General Mills insightful. I'm now delighted to welcome Dominic Parfitt, who's the Global Head of E-Commerce at William Grant & Sons. And he's going to talk to us about trends from outside the UK. You know, I did talk this morning about whilst we'll predominantly be talking about the UK, you know, there's a lot of the audience who are from elsewhere, and some of the learnings travel and some of them don't. So you've already seen some interesting insights earlier today, and I suspect Dominic's going to give us some really interesting learnings from further afield. So just as background, Dominic's been in the FMCG industry for sort of 17 years in a variety of commercial roles, and has sort of focused in on e-commerce in sort of the last 6 years, where he's built up a variety of experiences such as creating online strategies, focusing on brilliant basics, managing global retailers, and channel development. So with that, over to you, Dominic.
Thanks a million, Francis. Thanks for the kind intro. Good afternoon, My Digital Shelf UK. I hope you're all safe and well. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you today. So I think just to start off, originally I wrote the agenda for this presentation back on the 9th of January. And I recently read it back for the first time in a while. It was actually at the beginning of last week before the US conference. And one of the quotes, one of my agenda points was, quote unquote, learn how the world of e-commerce is changing and what this could mean for your market. Little did I realize back on the 9th of January just how much the world would change and the impact the pandemic would have on e-commerce. At that particular point, I had no idea of the journey that we were about to go on. So taking this into consideration, as Francis said, it's such a great time for us all to be connecting and sharing our experiences, as there's never been a more significant time for e-commerce. So thanks a million to Sarah for organising this brilliant event. So on to our session today, global e-commerce trends that the UK market can learn from. What will we cover? So we'll be focusing on 3 areas in this afternoon's presentation. So I'll start with how the pandemic has shifted the mindset of our organisation. So it's really important to begin with that I give you that level of context, and I'm sure it's already featured in many of today's presentations. I will then share with you.
Sorry, just to jump in there, Dominic. I'm sorry to be tricky. We've got a tech issue. We can't actually see your slides.
Okay, not at all. Oh God, hold on a second. Bear with me. Right. Let me just go back into presenter mode. Can you see them now? Hello?
Yeah, no, I don't see the screen refreshing right now.
I can just continue to talk if you want, and hopefully they come back.
Yeah, do you want to? Can you email them to Sarah or myself, and maybe we can do a something combined?
Yeah, hang on a second.
Sorry for the technical glitch, everyone.
Hang on, right. The joys of modern technology. So just sent them over to Sarah, and I'm just going to try once more, okay?
Great, thank you.
Just see. Anything yet?
Not yet. I think it's in the ether.
Okay.
What I propose we do then is, if they are in the ether, is maybe you start voicing them over, and then hopefully behind the scenes we can get them up behind you in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, so really sorry about that, everybody. So there is 3 areas that I'm going to focus on in this afternoon's verbal presentation. So firstly, I was going to start with how the pandemic has shifted the mindset of our organisation, as I said before, then share with you the 5 big global trends. and then followed by a final summary, and then over to you for some questions. So you're going to have to really concentrate here because you're just going to be listening to me speaking. So to start the first section, as I said, I wanted to give you a bit of context. So as a category, spirits is a bit behind other FMCGs. I've originally come from a non-food background, and in my previous role, we were way ahead in terms of our approach to e-commerce. That being said, the spirits category is definitely catching up, and I'm going to share with you today there are some really, really exciting things happening at the minute to drive online conversion. At William Grant & Sons, e-commerce is growing fast, but it's still a relatively young function. So as a team, we're still only around 3 years old, and that includes all of our markets as well. At this point, e-com remains a small portion of our global net sales, but growing exponentially. So I'm sure alongside a lot of other companies who've joined this virtual conference, the mindset in our organization has really, really step changed in the last 6 months. Actually, from the data that we can see across all of our global retailers, the pandemic has shifted online spirits forward by years. So obviously the big question that everybody's asking is how much of this will stick. Regardless, our company has had to reevaluate the level of focus we are putting into the e-commerce channel, and it now needs to be a top priority for our business. There'll be no surprise to any of you, and I mentioned it before, that across the biggest retailers that we work with in the globe, all of our sales are growing. And I had a lovely chart to share with you on the right-hand side that shows that massive spike with regards to our sellout trend from one of our biggest retailers. So obviously it's really unpredictable at the minute in terms of where the year is going to finish out, but we'll have to wait and see. Pre-COVID as a team, in all of our priority markets, we had already begun working hard in the background, and many of our plans were already coming to fruition. So obviously the situation has just emphasized what is happening, and it's become a real moving feast at the minute. So obviously this is all being helped by the increased amount of people shopping for our brands online. So again, I had a lovely chart to share with you, which was basically some traffic increases around the search term whiskey, which is one of the biggest spirits category terms in terms of online sales. So what I've done is I've extracted a week's data from one of our retailers from back in June, and it showed that consumers searching have more than doubled, growing by 154% year on year. So obviously due to these consistent increases in our traffic and our on-site media performance, our ROI has doubled with limited diminished returns. So as it stands, there's a lot of opportunities out there for us to continue to grow our business through paid media. So to finish this section off, and before I ask Francis how the slides are coming along, I was going to share with you a final picture that demonstrated the way that we used to shop and how it's going to change. So basically what the picture is, I'm going to try and talk around what it is, but it's the visual of when the Nike store on Oxford Street in London reopened again after lockdown. And obviously looking at that picture and the massive queues and thinking about the really bleak winter that we face in many, many markets, it makes me think that obviously many shoppers will continue to adopt the behaviours of regularly shopping online. There's not going to be a lot of people standing outside in the freezing cold in massive queues with masks on. So as a result of that, as a company, we're gearing up for our biggest ever period of trading during Q4 with many e-commerce categories and countries. And that leads nicely on to section 2, which is our global trends, and a good opportunity to stop and ask Sarah how you're getting on with the slides.
So unfortunately, no luck. I must apologise again.
No
yeah, we don't have them at this end.
Yeah, that's fine.
In real time, we might be able to get them up any second now.
Okay, I'm just going to keep on freestyling then, if that's all right.
Yeah, you're doing good so far.
Thank you. So before we go into section 2, I was going to point out that there are many trends that we could have shared from a global perspective, but I've actually cut it down to the 5 biggest that we are experiencing from a category perspective. And I've also taken the current environment into consideration. So obviously I'm unable to share exact data sources, but hopefully there's enough here to guide and validate your thinking. So I'll try and talk around them as best I can. So for the first big trend, I'm going to focus on content, and I'm not talking about getting the basics right. So what we're seeing within the spirits category across many markets is a massive shift in the consumer expectation to have just basic images and content. So this has shifted into a desire for deep, rich brand content that visualizes the product USPs in a way the shopper can relate to, and includes things like awards, serves, lifestyles, and even the new emerging theme of utilizing the wider brand world, like brand ambassadors and distilleries. So as a team, content is a constant battle for us. There's always a requirement for us to do more, for us to localize it, and it really evolves quickly. So this means that we have to ensure that all the bases are covered and that we're keeping our brands relevant, but also that our creatives have synergy between the different channels. So on the slide, what you would have seen is some fantastic examples from a couple of brands within the spirits category. One of them was Teeling, which is an Irish whiskey. It's actually a competitor brand. It was from Asda in the UK, and it basically outlined how they brought their product USP to life in a really small framework. And in the middle, we have my favorite William Grant & Sons brand, which is Monkey Shoulder, which really emphasizes the serve and brings the serve and cocktails to life on A+ content on Amazon. So the reason why this is so important is because spirits is a fairly complex category. So the consumer finds it difficult to navigate and understand. And from a specific retailer analysis that we did with within one of our priority markets, we know that consumers have a dwell time 3 times higher on our product detail pages versus any other grocery category. So if we want to convert shoppers, it's really important that we provide that deep, rich content. And if you really think about this, it makes sense, as in many cases, spirits could be the highest value item in a grocery basket. Therefore, it's obviously a considered purchase. And for us,
so Dominic, just to interrupt, the slides are now up, and I think the guys are just scrolling through to the 5 biggest trends.
I am on slide 8 now, so halfway through. So you'll see the amazing example from Monkey Shoulder, the middle one.
Yeah, keep on going. A couple more slides to go still.
Cool. Tell me when you're there.
Stop. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, super. Happy days. So I'll tell you when to change the slides then. So the reason why we put so much emphasis on this as a company is, for us, it's the biggest driver of organic conversion. When we change our content, we usually experience double-digit increases to base conversion. So now I'm going to move on to the next trend, and if you'd like to switch slides there, Sarah, it is online events. So across most of our markets, online events have exploded, and I'm sure this is the same in every other category. So pre-pandemic, there was the standard seasonal percentage uplifts and decent levels of year-on-year growth. But since the pandemic, we're seeing exponential growth like nothing we've ever witnessed before. So a really strong example from this is actually from the UK, where Father's Day grew in the high triple digits. So if you look at some of the examples on the slide, you can see the implementation across different retailers and brands. We've also witnessed a massive increase in visibility and spend across the market and across digital channels. So it was all backed up by a lot of innovative new packaging concepts, brand stores, personalization, and increased emphasis on direct to consumer. So there was a lot more creativity within the category around Father's Day. So just before this event in May, some of you might have remembered this, Nielsen highlighted that the UK channel shifting meant 38% of households were now shopping online. So what that meant is obviously footfall into stores was shifting into traffic online. And for brands like ours across every market, this means that events will be an even more important battleground, and we need to be in them to win, obviously. And again, you think about that picture that I showed you back at the beginning of the presentation, that really emphasizes that point. Moving on to the next trend, emerging channels. So if you want to switch the slide over, please, Sarah. So within our category, 2 sub-channels have rapidly evolved. So they've been around for a while, but within our current environment, the requirement to integrate these into our route to market has grown much, much stronger. So the first is in an area that we call internally on demand. So for example, these are platforms like Deliveroo, Uber Eats. So the on-demand channel is becoming a more and more interesting to brands like ours, as mainly because they're widening their services to offer to reach consumers at home. So initially, obviously, everybody knows because you've all used them before, they were food delivery, but now they all include groceries and for alcohol for many major retailers. So we also know that in many markets, a large proportion of on-demand baskets contain beers, wines, and spirits. So that's why they've become an important channel for us to start testing. These providers are also evolving fast from a tech perspective. So one of the examples that you can see up on the slide on the left-hand side is a company in Latin America called Rappi. So Rappi is a super app in which you can order any service. So they're a really, really dynamic company within a region that has a very, very complex infrastructure. So I think when I say any service on there, I think you can even anything you want. A football team once ordered a goalkeeper to do nets for them. So you can order anything, but obviously a large proportion of their baskets contain alcohol, as I said earlier. The other emerging sub-channel that's been around for a while is direct to consumer. You can see on the right-hand side a brilliant example from Heinz, which apparently was built in 2 weeks. So I don't know if this is folklore, but it landed perfectly at the beginning of lockdown at a time when there was mass panic buying in the UK. For many brands, D2C is obviously notoriously difficult to make the economics work, but it can offer an opportunity for some rich consumer learnings and data. So across the globe at the minute, I'm seeing more and more brands in more markets investing into these areas. So while both of the examples on this slide may not represent the scale or value you're going to get through more traditional channels, they offer great learning potential and an opportunity to reach new consumers. So whilst it's important to remain focused on the core fundamentals, testing in a new route to market can obviously help you all to future-proof your strategy. So I'm going to move on to the next trend, and it's from China, but we're starting to witness this more and more in the West too. So Sarah, if you could move the slide, that'd be greatly appreciated. So in China during lockdown, there was a mass surge of live streaming experiences all online. So as you can see on the left-hand side, many of our brand ambassadors and KOLs participated in these live streaming events where we can actually convert shoppers within the stream. So the main purpose of these was not primarily commercial, but it was to educate and get liquid on lips. It's also an opportunity for us to deliver exceptional brand experiences at home. This is becoming more and more important as we face a continued disruption that a lot of us are in at the minute. So these have been continuing through our Tmall store, and whilst they don't have the final numbers that I estimate now at this particular point, the reach is up in the millions. We've seen some examples of this in the West already and within our category. So for example, Pernod did something with Amazon last year, but definitely not adopted to the same scale as in China. So on to the final theme, and this final theme is based on a retailer's massive growth over the last 6 months. So Sarah, if you'd like to change the slide, thank you. Of course, it's Amazon. So as we all know, Amazon were agile enough to capitalize on the current situation. So it's no surprise that their business has once again step changed over the last 6 months. And the reason why I've chosen this as a global trend is that Amazon exists across every region, and as a result, in our markets put a tremendous amount of focus into this retailer. So we deal with them on a market by market basis. So I apologize to anyone who this might seem basic to, but the big learning here is around the importance of focusing on your Amazon fundamentals. So my first advice is to put a relentless focus into the brilliant basics across Amazon, but that can be from both an operational perspective and also in your range and content. And only really when you've done that, then at that point it's the time to start building your media plan, etc. There's also the question of 1P versus 3P, so obviously don't have the time to go into that today or to give you my full perspective. But if possible, I would advise testing in both to reach your own conclusions. On spirits, as you can see from the visuals on the left-hand side, there's a massive switch into gifting and a big opportunity and potential for gifting on Amazon. So there's, as you can see, the example for Hendrix demonstrates how you can build added value across your range on Amazon. And finally, my most important point, to ensure you've strong Amazon capability in your business. So this is absolutely critical to make sure you capture the opportunity in the most sustainable way. And I think actually I saw on the agenda later today, AB InBev have a specific Amazon session, so definitely worth checking that one out. Okay, so that's it from me on a trends perspective. So if you'd like to switch 2 slides, Sarah, that would be great. We're going to move into final summary and then on to questions if we've got any time because of the technical glitches. So in summary, just a couple of final thoughts from me. So firstly, there are many global insights that we could have shared, but my 5 biggest in this pandemic era are content, events, new channels, experiences at home, and Amazon. Obviously, the landscape has massively been disrupted by COVID-19, and there's going to be a lasting impact, but it's hard to predict exactly what that will be. As mentioned across the 5 global insights, it's more important than ever for brands to continue to adapt to reach consumers in new and different ways. And obviously, as we saw, and I could have shown you back at the beginning, an indication from our business of how all of the sub-channels are delivering strong sales growth and learning potential. But the big question is how fast they evolve for your business and what resource you will need to allocate to balance the short and long term. Finally, there are many, many opportunities to go after, and it's really, really important to pick your battles. So that's it from me. Really sorry about the technical glitches that completely threw me. But if you've got any questions, now is the time to ask them. I don't know how we are for time, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Dominic. So we got time for one, maybe 2 questions. And I think the interesting one for me would be, you've obviously talked about a very immersive experience, but you're obviously working with products that have a relatively high ticket price. So people are going to be prepared to, investigate and research and learn more before they add to basket. What would your advice be to brands whose ranges tend to be much lower ticket prices in terms of, I know, 2, 3, 4, 5 euros per SKU, and how relevant all of that rich content would be to those sorts of brands?
It's a good question. It will be very different. Obviously, I've come from a background where I'm working on 2, 3, and 4 pounds or €4 products. But I mean, my advice would be exactly the same. Ensure the fundamentals are nailed across all of your range and particularly your best sellers. But obviously, the requirement for much richer content, I don't think is as important within those other categories.
Okay, great. And obviously in other regions, you've got a very sophisticated path to purchase and, using all these events and whatever. Tell us a little bit about the path to purchase and, how much your marketing and media colleagues are on board and make everything shoppable. How do you manage that sort of balancing act between brand building and, sales driving?
So we are a brand-led organization, so it's really, really important that we're totally connected across the path to purchase. And the team that we sit in is advocacy, connections, and e-commerce. So that ensures that we are working together to capture consumers when they're considering our products, when they're aware of them, and when they're ready to purchase. So we, we're building our capability all the time on this and trying to focus more on things from an omni-channel perspective. But one of the big things that we're doing at the minute, for example, is trying to close the loop in social and trying to drive traffic from our brand sites onto our retailers. So those are just a few examples, but we're completely connected.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, we're out of time now, so thank you once again to Dominic for sharing that, and apologies to everybody again for the tech issues, but at least you've seen the end of the presentation, and I think it will be posted afterwards.